Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this sensational panel that we have put together under the wise guidance of Stephen Martini. Stephen is from Nishwain Group and actually suggested a panel such as this during our annual conference with New Jersey Future, but we thought it was such a great standalone topic and attracted so many different professions and people who are interested in this topic, is that we wanted to do a webinar, invite everybody to attend. And I will say registration has been wonderful. We received about 150 people who signed up for this webinar. We are also going to have it posted on YouTube and on njplanning.org. So on behalf of the American Planning Association, New Jersey chapter, we thank Stephen for putting this together, for all the sensational panelists you're going to be hearing from shortly. And we hope that everybody enjoys the next 90 minutes. So kick it over to you, Stephen, and thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Sheena. And thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar this afternoon. My name is Steve Martini. I'm a senior associate with Nishwain Group. Today, we'll be discussing the growing film production industry in the state and how it's shaping local communities as well as regionally. Whether it's a new studio in Newark or Fort Monmouth, or film productions at scenic locations throughout the state, the film industry is taking off all over New Jersey, which I'm sure everyone has watched the film or series that's been filmed in the state recently. And coincidentally, this session is very timely with the Montclair Film Festival wrapping up on Sunday, today's announcement of Paramount occupying the 1888 studios in Bayonne, and last week's release of Bruce Springsteen's biopic, Deliver Me From Nowhere, which was filmed at numerous locations across the state. So the idea of this panel came about because one of our municipal clients was in the early stages of bringing a new film studio to be constructed in their town, and we were providing economic development services. And in that, we evaluated how it could be a critical piece to a larger redevelopment project and provided guidance on how a municipality could prepare for the studio in terms of permitting ancillary or secondary businesses, workforce preparation, and local organization collaboration. So we have a lot of ground we're going to try to cover today. We have 6 speakers with us who are at the forefront of this. So first, we have Elizabeth Parchment, who's the team lead for film marketing and strategic initiatives at New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission. She'll speak about the Film Ready certification. Then we have Chris Del Vecchio, who is the product officer of manufacturing incentives and tax credits at the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. He will discuss the film tax credit incentive programs offered by the state. Next, we have John Crowley, who is the executive director at the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission, and he'll provide insight regarding the film industry impacts on the evolving real estate development patterns that's being caused from all this. Then we have Desiree Hadley, who's the director of Office of Film and Television at the City of Newark. She'll discuss film activity in Newark and how it's becoming part of the city through seamless filming in neighborhoods and workforce development opportunities. Then we have Allison Ladd, who is the deputy mayor and director of the Department of Economic and Housing Development at the City of Newark. She'll provide insight regarding the Lionsgate Studio redevelopment project that's underway. And finally, we have Liz Laney, who's a principal at Phillips Price Geigel Laney Keller, and she'll go into detail regarding the planning efforts that are involved with the Netflix studio and development at Fort Monmouth. So I'll start with Elizabeth Parchment, who again is a team lead for film and marketing strategic initiatives at the Motion Picture and Television Commission. And Elizabeth, I know many of our viewers probably are familiar with the Film Ready program and probably have already received certification for this municipality. But for those who are not aware, can you guide us through the Film Ready certification process and the benefits that are involved with the Film Ready certification?
Sure, I sure can. And if we can go to our first slide, and I just like to first say thank you to Steve for having us. This is a really power-packed panel, and we hope that we're able to impart to you today and you have some takeaways, not only as it relates to Film Ready, our program and initiative by the New Jersey Economic Development Authority and the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission, but to really get a really great view of the production industry in New Jersey and what's fueling it and the uptick in the renaissance that we are seeing in this industry. So to start off, just to give you a little context here and some background, established in 1978 and part of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, The Film Commission has spent over 45 years supporting New Jersey's film and television industry through our exceptional service to our clients, our strategic initiatives that attract production, and our statewide production support for the economic and image benefits the state derives. The commission is built on 5 main pillars that fuel our resources for studios in the production industry. And so some of them I'd like to talk about today before I hand it over to my colleagues. But one of those, first, we have as far as our 5 pillars, our concierge style film support and our crew network, which John will expand on a little bit later, as well as our competitive film tax incentive program, which Chris will dive into. The 2 pillars that I'd like to focus on today are our diverse and film-ready locations, which is our location library, and our expanding infrastructure, which is our New Jersey 411 production resources directory. And those are some of the main pillars that fuel the Film Ready New Jersey program. Our location library, which is our own, which consists of nearly 5,200 sites. It enables filmmakers to easily scout locations for their projects by simply visiting the commission's website. The types of locations that we look for we'll go into that a little bit later, but they are locations that are outside of that productions are willing and typically willing to travel outside the zone for, locations that have the ability that you control that location as much as possible. And then we're always looking for more locations that we can add to our website because it showcases the diversity of New Jersey and the assets that we have. Our New Jersey 411 Production Services Directory, it's brand new. It's a new comprehensive crew and service directory, and it's open to all New Jersey-based businesses and individuals. Currently, we have about 2,400 professionals and services listed on our website that provide solutions to the production industry. This is at no cost. And so the goal of our NJ411 directory is to establish an up-to-date network of available resources for production companies to utilize while they're working in the Garden State. So these 2 main pillars are a part of the Film Ready New Jersey program. And you can go to the next slide. Okay. So what is Film Ready? So the Film Ready New Jersey program was initially launched as a pilot in 2022 and then was expanded statewide in 2023. Earlier this year, the Commission Board adopted program updates to bring greater consistency to the program and enhance New Jersey's appeal as a premier destination for film productions after a 5-month, a very long review process with the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General. Out of that came updates that emphasize standardized filming guidelines and transparent fee structures, which we'll talk about as it relates to ordinances. So essentially, Film Ready New Jersey, the program is a 5-step certification and a marketing program that educates municipalities on the basics of motion picture and television production and sets basic standards for attracting filmmaking. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay. So as I just mentioned, it's a 5-step program. The first step that a municipality, a locality, we use those words, those terms interchangeably, a county that will do is they will first, the first step is attending a Film Ready workshop. This is a 1-day workshop, and representatives will receive training and guidance from industry professionals, local mayors, the commission staff, as well as our board members, and learn about the economic impact of hosting on-location filming, ordinances, permitting, opportunities for small businesses, and the expanding infrastructure. Participants then walk away with a toolkit to attract and welcome productions to their community and learn about the necessary steps required to become a certified film-ready community. The day usually ends with a fireside chat. It's a panel featuring mayors and industry professionals who've seen success in the industry. And then the workshop also features Film Ready Police and Fire, which is designed to educate and train police and fire chiefs in public safety and motion picture and entertainment safety. University. Our next workshop will actually be hosted at the League of Municipalities in Atlantic City on Tuesday, November 18th from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And so you can visit our website if you would like to attend. Our second step in the certification is to designate a film ready liaison. This is really important because it's your boots on the ground. It's your liaison between the production company and between our office as well. That person must be employed by a division of the city or the county's local government. They're an experienced official who knows the ins and outs of their community and who's willing to expedite communications between the relevant departments involved, like police and fire, engineering, all for necessary approvals to move those on location filming forward. The third step is that you either pass a film ordinance that promotes media production in a way that is both mutually beneficial for residents and industry professionals alike, or administratively enforceable guidelines like a code of conduct must be adopted. Step 4 in the certification process is to designate a community affiliate that will submit photos of potential filming locations in your community for inclusion in the commission's location library. This is your sure way, your sure bet of marketing the uniqueness, the charm, the assets that are within the community. This is typically done by your film ready liaison, but it can be done by a volunteer or anyone else that will have access to our database. Then step 5 is to list your local production resources. And that's really important because these are your small businesses that you're going to uplift and give more exposure to. And these can include like your restaurants, your caterers, your office space, car rentals, hardware, lumber stores, lodging, car rentals, hospitals and shopping centers. These are all the types of businesses that can support a production coming to your town. There's limitless opportunities for collaboration and exchange for businesses and professionals alike within the film and television ecosystem. We also highlight those companies that have special designations, like if they're minority and women owned, veteran owned, in order to utilize their services as well. These two pillars or these two services are offered at no cost to the user and is a resource base for the commission. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, the benefits. What are the benefits of becoming a film ready community? First is that once they go through that process we walk them through, they get their locations tagged in our database as located in a film ready locality. That's really important. And this database actually filters into a global database, which is called Production Hub. So you can be in Dubai, you can be in Oklahoma, Tokyo. And if we have locations that meet and render in the search that they're looking for, a production company is looking for, it will show up in this global database. You can also, a municipality, a locality will also enjoy unlimited access to our Real Scout system to continuously, on a rolling basis, upload location photos to continue to expand and to showcase the diversity, uniqueness, charm of that community. You recognize as a film ready locality in our communications that we'll send out. Use of our Film Ready New Jersey logo, which will be going, which is currently being redesigned, and so we'll be pushing that out very soon. And then you're creating opportunities for your local small and minority and women-owned businesses. Continue to receive ongoing support and services from the commission. And we like to walk production companies and as well as localities from script to screen. And then there's that ongoing film tourism that is has been so fun and exciting. We've seen the residual effects, the ripple effects from productions that have filmed in numerous counties and localities throughout the state. Okay, next slide. All right. Here's our certification dashboard. So you can see from a bird's eye view a high level view of where we currently are. So our universe, looking on the left side of the screen, the 585, that's our universe of who potentially can become a film ready community. This includes municipalities and this includes counties. And so our goal is that we would like to see all 585 localities in the state of New Jersey as designated as a film ready community. So far, we've had close to 200 localities that have attended a workshop, and we've hosted 8 workshops. Our 9th will be coming up in November. And so to date, we have certified 47 localities that have officially been designated as film ready communities. These little pins that you see here on the map are where those film ready localities are currently right now. We've seen an 109% increase since the beginning of this year of applications that we have approved. And so we have about 50 localities that are currently in the pipeline, which is very exciting to be certified film ready. And then we're engaging about another 100 localities right now. So we're working really hard to certify as many localities in the state of New Jersey. All right, next slide. I'm sure you want to know who's film ready already. So here is our list of current film ready localities, including municipalities, as well as our counties, which is on the right side. The South has Southern New Jersey has 6 localities so far. Our largest intake of film ready communities is in our central region of the state. And in North Jersey, we have 18 localities so far. We'll be pushing out another we have more localities that are in the pipeline. So by the end of this year, we hope to flip those numbers a little bit or bring a little bit more parity there. Okay. All right, so we're very excited about working with you as municipal planners and managers to certifying your town. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them at the end of this presentation. So kicking this back to Steve.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a very good overview and insight of the film ready process. So now I'm going to hand it off to Chris Delvecchio, who again is product officer at NJEDA. And Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the tax programs and financial incentives that are offered through NJEDA for filming in the state?
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you. And thanks again for having me and for putting all this together. So first and foremost, we have what we refer to as our legacy film tax credit program. This is the original program that was enacted in 2018, and it's been around since then. We've had a ton of activity through the program, and as I'm sure John will go into later, the spend each year is just going up and up and up. So under the legacy program, projects are eligible for 35% on all wages and salaries statewide. They're eligible for 30% on all goods and services that are used outside of the 30-mile studio zone. I know Elizabeth had mentioned the 30-mile studio zone. Just a little background here. The unions that are based in New York City and out of offices that are in Columbus Circle, they require that productions that are union productions pay extra for travel if they're outside of this 30-mile radius. So naturally, productions looking to cut costs don't want to go outside of that radius. So the incentive gives an extra 5% on any goods and services that are used or consumed outside of that 30-mile radius in order to try to incentivize production to get kind of away from the New York City area where most of the activity takes place. Under the legacy program, projects can be eligible if they spend at least $1 million on the project in New Jersey, or if at least 60% of the project, excluding post-production, is spent in New Jersey. So that allows for both large projects and smaller scale projects as well to qualify for the incentive. On the legacy side, there's a $100 million allocation yearly, but we're able to continue making approvals borrowing from future years. So the allocation is not really an issue, whereas other states have lower caps on the amount of projects they're allowed to approve. So all of this together, and also our actual percentages are higher than most other states. So all of this together kind of makes the state very attractive in terms of coming here to produce films and television shows. And obviously that's been evidenced with the increased, qualified spend year over year. One thing about this legacy program is that there is a cap on what we can incentivize for highly paid individuals, what we call above the line. And this would be like your directors, your actors, cinematographers, producers, essentially, the highly paid people that are going to be working on a production. In addition to the legacy program, we also have a digital media tax credit. Steve, you can go to the next slide. The digital media tax credit has kind of two different eligibility paths. The first one is for basically any digital media content, and there's a very wide definition of what digital media content is. The second eligibility path is for post-production only expenses, and this is a program that we're seeing a lot of increased interest in. So projects that come in here to do post-production only, meaning they don't have to shoot any principal photography days in New Jersey, and they can come in and get between 35 and 40% on these expenses based on how they come in to the program. There's different eligibility criteria that are required, and actually the most recent statute, which updated the program over the summer, has made it even easier for productions to qualify for this. So we are seeing a ton of activity and a ton of interest on the post-production side of the program. So while there is need for studio space as well, and I'm sure John will talk more later as to what the needs are for both these groups, in addition to the studio space, there is space that's needed for post-production activity. And it doesn't need some of the higher requirements and and things that are needed for stages and for shooting in studio. You can go to the next slide, Steve. And then we also have what we call the studio partner film tax credit. And so this and the next one, the film lease partner facilities, are aimed at attracting larger scale studio development to the state. So studio partners and film lease film lease partner facilities each have separate annual allocations from the legacy program of $150 million annually. So it's a total of $400 million in the pot, 150 for studio partners, 150 for film lease partners, and then the 100 for legacy applicants. Studio partners, in order to be a studio partner, production companies need to commit to build or lease at least 250,000 square feet of studio space for a period of at least 10 years for studio partners and 5 years for film lease partner facilities. In order to attract these large scale developments, the benefits for studio partners far exceed the legacy program. So in addition to increased base tax credit of 40% as opposed to 35 for the legacy, they also see an increase of 10% on their goods and services, and they don't have that increase for being outside of the zone. It's all a flat 40% tax credit for them. And in addition to that, they're able to include additional costs that legacy applicants aren't. So I talked about the $750,000 cap for above the line. Studio partners essentially do not have that. If Steve scrolls down on this a little bit, you can see a chart. So basically it depends on how much money they spend, but assuming they spend more than $25 million on a project, they're allowed to include up to $72 million of that above the line costs and over the $750,000. So that's extremely attractive for these larger scale studios like your Netflixes, like your Lionsgates that are coming in and making giant movies, and they would need a higher tax credit in order to justify that. So we have been successful so far in attracting different production companies to the state through these programs. Steve, you can go to the next slide. And this is talking about the film lease partner facilities. The only real difference between the studio partners and the film lease partner facilities is that the studio partners are going to be more of your production companies, whereas the film lease partner facilities is going to be for developers that want to lease space in that facility to other productions. And then those other productions would come in as film lease production companies. So anybody, basically, they wouldn't, any production company would not have to build a facility or lease it for 10 years. They would only need to, it's on a project by project basis. So anybody that shoots at the facility is able to get increased benefits. You can go to the next slide, Steve. As I mentioned, it's been very successful so far, obviously, because we have had multiple designees. So far we have Lionsgate Studios in Newark, which they were approved in 2022. And obviously they're still working on it. I believe they've finished all their site remediation, and they're going to start construction, I believe, in the new year. Obviously others on the panel can speak more to that, but they were our first studio partner designee. Next, we designated Netflix, obviously, on May 8th, 2022. I know there's others on the panel that speak more to this as well, but obviously Netflix project is very exciting, and it's going to be big for the state. Lastly, we had 1888 Studios in Bayonne, and they're an approved film lease partner facility. So that means that they're going to be able to lease out their space to other production companies that are looking to come in the state and receive those film lease production company benefits. This project is expected to be completed fall 2027, and it's going to be a pretty massive facility. They're saying 1.5 million square feet, which would make it one of the largest studios in North America. And I mean, I wasn't sure how much I was going to be allowed to say about it, considering they haven't been approved yet. But considering Steve mentioned it already, and obviously it's for public consumption at this point. We have another studio partner, Paramount, is going to hopefully be approved tomorrow by our board as the third and final studio partner, and they're going to be taking space inside of 1888 Studios in Bayonne. So they'll be taking about 280,000 square feet of the 1.5 million square feet once it's finished. So yeah, we have lots of programs going on, and it's been very successful so far. Hoping to keep this good momentum going in the future.
Thank you, Chris. That was a very good overview of all the financial incentives that are involved with the film industry. So next we have John Crowley, who's the Executive Director for New Jersey's Motion Picture and Television Commission. And John, I know you're a man of many hats. So I just know you can go in many different directions, but can you go through the real estate development trends that you're witnessing due to the influx of film production studios, and then the needs that I guess planners and administrators can address through this higher demand of studios and productions in the state?
Yeah, sure. Steve, thanks for having me, having all of us here. And Liz, thank you for arranging this. Steve, let me answer your question, but before I get to it directly, I think it's good to sort of set the table a little bit with everybody that's online today. I'm going to talk about development, but I want to give the numbers as to why would I want to do some development in the state of New Jersey. Well, an article came out in the Hollywood Reporter just last week that talked about New Jersey's the only state that's had consistent growth in 2024, and we're also seeing that in 2025. So what does that mean? That means that, like what Chris was talking about, that's the qualified spend. So when a production comes into New Jersey, they're not bringing rental cars. They're not bringing hotel rooms. They're not bringing groceries for their crew. They're not bringing in paint and brushes and nuts and bolts to construct their sets. they're acquiring all these things when they're here in New Jersey. So that's the qualified spend, and they're doing it with businesses that are registered to do business here in New Jersey. So some hard numbers for all of you who are planners and want to see what are the details. Devil's in the details, right? So in 2023, the qualified spend in the state was $600 million. 2024, we got more aggressive in our business development outreach. As I always like to say, if you're throwing a party, or you're throwing an event, I should say, and you're not handing out invites, nobody knows that you've got something going on. So we got more aggressive in our outreach, banging on doors and meeting with the studios and networks and letting them know about all the things that we have to offer here in New Jersey. And that qualified spend, as I said, went from $600 million in 2023 to $833 million in 2024. So that's a 41% increase in production here in the state. And the actual number of productions, that was a year-over-year increase of almost 10%. I think it was 9.8%. So we're expecting, and I'll get into this in a minute, to see more gains in 2025. So that also represented an increase in crew hires. 2023, we're at about 17,000 crew hires. In 2024, that went up to 30,000 crew hires. With the arrival of Paramount to the Bayonne 1888 project, I think, conservatively speaking, Paramount is going to go from, they've been averaging one production a year over the last 12 years to, I think conservatively, we can say that they'll bring in at least 5 productions per year now that they have that new rating of as a studio partner that Chris spoke about. So with those 5 productions, again, conservatively speaking, as an average, a studio production right around 20 million. Sometimes they're more than that. Happy Gilmore spent 152 million while they were here in New Jersey. A House of Dynamite, that's the Catherine Bigelow film that just premiered last weekend on Netflix. They were closer to, it was 60 or 70 million dollars. So, but let's take 20 million as sort of a base. And if they're bringing in 5 of those, you do the math, you can see that you're looking at about $100 million a year. That deal is worth 10 years. All of a sudden, you're looking at an additional $1 billion in qualified spend here in the state, and probably anywhere from 150 to 350 crew hires per film. So you do the math on all those productions. And then it's also safe to say that Bayonne will also be looking to do some smaller deals. Paramount is a 10-year deal. They're looking to get some other studio partners to come in for like 3-year deals. And each of those, I think, conservatively speaking, 2 projects additionally into the state to take advantage of the incentives and all the other things that we have to offer, which I'll get into in a minute. So you're all of a sudden looking at here in New Jersey, we're going to go from 800 million in qualified spend to, with these new deals, you know, you're looking anywhere from $1 to $2 billion additionally every year. So you see, it's an industry that really is growing with more and more production coming here. So why would anybody say no to New Jersey? Aside from the incentives, which Chris walked you through, which are top tier, but why would you say no? Or more importantly, why would you want to come to New Jersey? Well, yes, the incentives. The incentives are the door opener. But we all know, working in business, there are a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that need to come together. They need to click to make somebody, you have to eliminate all the no's to get to a bunch of yeses and then get to that green light. So when I came into the commission about a year and a half ago, and I come from 30 years of production on the TV side, some on the film side. I created a show called Impractical Jokers and a bunch of other stuff. So I worked on production for many, many years. I'm also a councilman and a police commissioner here in New Jersey as well. So I straddle both worlds. So I was filming here in New Jersey because I knew that there were a whole bunch of things that the state offered. So what are they? No big secrets. We have the 3rd largest experienced workforce in the United States. Outside of LA and New York, we're it. And when people say, hey, look, I can go to other states, but I'm not getting the experienced crews that I really need and want to be able to be proficient in production and move quickly along, because shows are up and running for a month to 3 months. Bada bing, bada boom, got to move quickly. So they want experienced crews, and they say we want an experienced LA crew, or we want an experienced crew like you could find in New York. Well, here's the secret. A big number of the experienced New York crews actually live in New Jersey, and they'd much prefer to get in their car and drive down the Parkway to be at work in 30 minutes rather than slogging across a bridge or a tunnel to go to work in the city. Another big advantage is our variety of locations. So you have a script, and the script might call for it needs a mountain, or it needs a beach, or it needs a small town, or it needs a big city. Well, New Jersey has all of that. And having grown up in Los Angeles, I can tell you that we have far more variety in locations than we ever did in Los Angeles. Why is that? Well, they have earthquakes in LA, lived through a number of them, and things fall down. So we don't have the same issues, thank goodness, here in New Jersey. So we've got a huge variety of architectural styles and natural environments. I live at the shore, so we've got the beach, we've got sand, and we've got the ocean. But I know that I'm only 90 minutes away from a mountain with snow. Likewise, I'm very close to a very small, little sort of Mayberry RFD, little town, turn of last century sort of look. But I'm only 30 minutes, 40 minutes away, depending on traffic, from a big city. So I can also go from a neighborhood that's got Queen Anne's or Victorian homes to mid-century ranches, right? So we have a giant inventory of different looks, whether it's natural or architecturally, and that's another big draw. And again, they're all very, very close in terms of geographic space, because New Jersey is, I think, the fourth smallest state. So time is money, and to move your crew around from one location to the next is vitally important when you're putting a schedule together and you're on a budget. And then we've also got a commission. We just won an award. I'm going to toot our horn here. Elizabeth's online, so she knows. It was a big moment for us. We just got recognized as the most outstanding film commission in the world by the Location Guild, the International Location Managers Guild. So that was a big thing for us. Well, why is that? Well, that's because we're as hands-on as you want us to be. I've filmed in 25 states. Most of the time, the Film Commission says, hey, we're here if you need us. That's if you ever see them. You often don't see the Film Commission ever, but we're there to help coordinate between Department of Labor, the state troopers, Department of Transportation. If a production needs to have somebody put them in touch with these other state agencies. We also, through the Film Ready program that Elizabeth talked about, we have a lot of depth on the bench in terms of we know where all the ordinances are. We know what the ordinances are. We know council people and borough administrators to help sit at the table when we're pulling film permits, or where the production is pulling their permits, to sit with these municipalities and walk through the process so that everybody's on the same page. I say, do you remember the book, What to Expect When Expecting? I say Film Ready is what to expect when expecting a film production crew in your town. We're there to sort of bridge between the locality, the municipality, and the production. We're happy to do that. We also do location polls. So somebody gives us a script, we'll go through the location and we'll start pulling locations and put a packet together for them. We maintain that library that Elizabeth talked about, so I won't go into that anymore. But other than to say that is the first and primary way to attract production into a town, is by they go to our location library and they can see what your town has to offer. So why would you be interested in production if you're a town, a locality? Well, look at that $833 million spend, that qualified spend. Where is that going? Well, we talk about Billy Eichner was doing a film a couple of years ago called Bros. They needed balloons for a parade sequence. That was $19,000 in balloon purchases for one day. And that made the business owner ecstatic. Or we had one of our state senators down in Cape May with the Spielberg film that was here. And I pointed to all the crew. There were 350 crew members. And I said, you see all these people? I said, they're all down here staying in hotels. And they're in 8 hotels in your district, spending an average of $285 per night. And the senator looked at me and he said, and it's the off season. And I said, yes, exactly. And the hotel owners are ecstatic that you're here because it's the off season. They're filling all these rooms. And I said, but on top of that, when they wrap for the night, they each get a per diem, and they're taking that per diem, all 350 of them, and they're going to restaurants in your district buying dinner. So that's why we do what we do on the Film Commission. And that's what the incentives are here to do, is to put people to work, put New Jerseyans to work, and also get that spend, throughout the state. Now, for some of you that are planners, more specifically, I would say you look at this deal that was just announced yesterday with Paramount going into Bayonne, 1888. And you also look at Netflix, which takes possession of the fort where I'm sitting right now. They'll take possession of the fort in December. Construction will begin. Walls will start going up. They're already doing demolition work right now as we speak. It's amazing the transformation here over the last 2-3 months. But they'll take possession in December. In January, walls will start going up, foundations and what have you. They've already done a lot of work at Bayonne, like Chris mentioned, a lot of the soil remediation. They've leveled it. There are pads there for the foundations for the stages. So with Paramount coming in, you're going to see some of these other deals, as I mentioned, coming in. And what do both locations lack, in my opinion? You need more resort development in those two areas. I say resort, Sheratons and Hiltons are nice, but you've got a lot of that above the line talent that Chris was talking about. That's your cast. And you also have your department heads of lighting and camera and what have you. They're not going to want to stay in a hotel for 3 or 4 months. Maybe the first time they come to New Jersey in a project. But on the commission side, we always recognize the need to get studios to come back again and again and again. It's not any good if they're only coming here once. You want to keep capturing the business of coming back and back and back, and we do that. We've been very successful in with our level of customer care on the commission side of getting them to come back. So to do that, crews are going to want to be comfortable. If they know they're coming back to New Jersey, what you don't want is what's happening in the UK. People don't talk about this, but there are a lot of American crews that go over to the UK and elsewhere, Poland, Bulgaria, other places. And what you hear a lot of complaints from the crews saying, the hotels are old. There's not a lot of good choices to eat. And they want to be comfortable. As somebody who comes from production and has been on location for a month at a time, I can tell you it gets really old really fast. And when a location gets raised again of like, let's go back, you'll often hear the crew say, I really don't want to. So if any of you are planners and developers, I would look at those two areas because we are going to need some really nice developments for the above the line talent and also our department heads. Crew will stay in hotels or condos. There's a studio in Georgia called Trilith. And one of the smartest things they ever did is they built the studio, and 1 mile away, it looks like Disneyland, Main Street, USA, where they've got 15 or 20 different shops and restaurants, and they've got apartment buildings for the crew, for the grips and electric, and then they have condos for the department heads, and then they have single family homes. It looks like an English village that are all for the above the line talent, mostly your executive producers and your cast. So it's something that's really, really smart. I'm going to wind up by just saying that 2025, was 2024 a fluke? No. We're already seeing that there are going to be more projects that will be qualifying for the tax incentive programs than in 2024. So we're seeing, again, another increase there in the total number of projects. And the report that came out in the Hollywood Reporter that I alluded to at the top of this, in North America, the top 10 production hubs, Toronto is down. Texas is down. California is down. Georgia's down. New Mexico's down. New York was stagnant, and Illinois was the only other state like New Jersey that was up. Were they up 41%, double digits? No, not by a long shot. And they can count their up in numbers to Dick Wolf, which does a lot of those, Chicago Fire, Chicago Police, those procedurals. One of them just got canceled. I don't remember which one, about 2 weeks ago. So we expect that their number will drop. We're the only one that has had consistent growth 2024 and 2025. So when you see these deals like Paramount coming in, and you're going to see some other deals in the next couple of months, I'm pretty certain, we're on the ascendant, and we're on the ascendant for quite a while. So I hope I didn't exceed my slot, but that's sort of the big overview of what's going on in New Jersey, and why you need to be thinking about the near future here, at least for the next 10 years.
Thank you, John. That was a really good insight and overview of the film landscape in relation to like planning and development in New Jersey. And I think it was very informative and enlightening. We're going to transition now to the municipal side. And we have Desiree Hadley, who is the director of the Office of Film and Television for the City of Newark. And Desiree, if you could take us through what's involved with working with filmmakers, location managers, and also acting as a community liaison with the neighborhoods you're working and filming in, and the workforce development opportunities with local residents, just how that all kind of comes together.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. I'm Desiree Hadley. I manage the City of Newark's Office of Film and TV here in the city. And I'm going to start off by showing a sizzle reel that basically showcases Newark and why we are a great location for productions to film in. So I'm going to share my screen and play that video really quickly. Just give me 1 second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. Didn't have any popcorn for anyone, but that was our short sizzle reel that basically showcases some of the benefits to offered to production companies by the city of Newark when they come here to film. Newark is the largest city in the state of New Jersey, and we have like a variety of neighborhoods and communities that offer various forms of architecture that can double as other cities for production companies when they do come into the city of Newark to film. Um, so yeah, we are, a premier location, I like to think. But I wanted to really just get into some of the details on what my job entails as the liaison for film and TV here in Newark. So I mainly assist with facilitating the film and TV requests that come into the city. We have a digital permitting process. Originally, it was a paper process, but a few years back, the city transitioned into a digital process, which allows production companies, no matter where they are in this country or even in the world, they can go online and apply for a permit. With this digital permitting process, once they apply, every department within the city that needs to be notified or needs to be aware of what's happening with this production, such in some departments, some of the departments may include police, fire, engineering. Every department is notified once we receive a application for film and TV, any film and TV requests. So when that's done, we review it online, and then we also come together as a team, and we have a Zoom meeting similar to this to kind of walk through all of the requests and how the city of Newark can accommodate those requests. We definitely try our best to make the state proud and see what we can do as far as like allowing productions to kind of do what they need to do with minimal interruption to the community and to the folks who live here. I also assist with finding locations. There are sometimes when productions, most of the time when they come here, they know what they want, they know what they're looking for. There are locations that are frequented quite often, such as the National Newark Building, which is known as the Newark Film Studios. They are the most popular filming locations, so most productions use them, or they already have an idea of what they're looking for. They might, want to use either the Newark Film Studios or Symphony Hall or the museum, but sometimes they come to me when they're looking for a space that they're not aware may exist in Newark. So that could be anything from an office space, a house, an apartment building. I assist with those requests. And similar to what the state has, we do have a database online that assist them with looking for locations, and it also allows our residents to upload their properties to that database so that you know they can have their properties utilized as a filming location if a production company goes to that database to search for a specific location that they may offer. I also so as far as like getting back to the permits part, I make sure basically my job is to make sure we have the proper insurance in place. They have to communicate with our law department, our engineering department. If there is a request to use a fire hydrant, I'm the one who kind of facilitates that communication because, like most municipalities, most of the folks who work in city government are not that aware of how these processes work. And I'm just here to sort of like bridge that communication gap when it comes to city departments and the film and TV folks that come into the city of Newark requesting to film here. And I personally I love when we get productions in our community. Not only is it beneficial for the local businesses who can benefit, it's also beneficial to our residents who work in the industry. Or I'll use a young man as an example, a young man named Deshaun Carter, who recently relocated from Atlanta. He worked quite a bit in Atlanta on reality shows, and he relocated here to Newark. He is a Newark native, but he was struggling to kind of get back into the industry. He came to me, he requested, he sent over his resume, he requested to be placed as a PA or any type of opening that might be available on any of the sets that were filming in Newark. And I was able to assist him and get him a position earlier this summer. And he has been working on one of the movies that has been filming in Newark. For the last couple months, Samo Lives, they took him on and hired him for the entire duration of their filming here in Jersey. So that's one of the success stories that I love. That is one of the one of the greatest or best benefits to the film and TV production industry taking up space in our community is the fact that it helps with job placement and and employment opportunities. Another great example is the Warner Brothers production company. They have a great program called Access to Action, which the city of Newark was able to take advantage of. Warner Brothers filmed in Newark last spring, in the spring of 2024, and they were able to hire some of our residents to be a part of their Access to Action program. And they also returned this summer and hired a bunch of residents. I want to say they hired about 30 locals from Jersey, and about 6 or 7 of those folks were Newark residents who were able to take advantage of this employment opportunity that would have never been, presented had we not been able to kind of bridge that communication with the folks from the Warner Brothers production that were looking to hire folks, and myself, along with the workforce development team here in the city of Newark. Film and TV brings jobs and it brings money, right? So I love to just, be in a position where I can help to, uh, you know, get Newark out there on the big screen, help our residents with employment opportunities. And yeah, that's basically my job. And I also track the economic impact here in Newark. Once a production company wraps out of filming in Newark, I send over a short survey. It's a very short multiple choice survey that I send over, that basically gives us a brief overview of what was spent locally, if they patronized any of the local businesses, if they ate at any of our restaurants in Newark. And normally, the production crew members are pretty, open to sharing what they did do and where they ate, and if their crew went to lunch or breakfast locally at one of the restaurants downtown. There are times when they donate to local block associations, and they might share that information as well, and that helps us to justify the productions coming into town and being taking up space in our communities, because they do give back, and a great deal they do. And I'll also talk about the amazing news that the city of Newark received last week. We were awarded $750,000 from the state of New Jersey to devote to workforce training initiatives here in the city of Newark. So that money was allocated to Invest Newark, which is the economic development agency here for the city of Newark, and they will disperse it to local agencies who will dedicate the money to creating programs and classes and certifications for residents to become certified. And that money will grow our database, or our pool of local residents who are qualified to work in the industry. Even though we did see some success over the years in helping folks, work temporarily as PAs on some of the production sets here in Newark, we will be able to increase that number a great deal with this grant money we were awarded this year, which I am so happy about. So thank you to the state for creating that amazing grant opportunity for us. And with that being said, Lionsgate is scheduled to break ground in January, which is great. And I can only imagine that with the opening of Lionsgate, that will only increase, right, the opportunities available for our residents. So, I mean, the two will go hand in hand. The grant money that we receive, which will help to train our residents, along with the opening of Lionsgate in January. Um, it's a win-win for the city of Newark, and I will allow Allison Ladd to come on and speak more about the Lionsgate development that is going to break ground in January of 2026.
Thanks, Desiree. I'm really excited to be on a panel with you because there's so much intersection between what you're doing and what I do every day as well. So first, just thanks to Sheena Cullum. She's just incredible. I know all of you know that, especially those from beyond New Jersey, but grateful to be on a panel with the APA of New Jersey. And Steve, thanks for your work also in the city of Newark with Nishuane, as well as being on the panel. So I've been excited to hear all the other speakers because I am Allison Ladd, and I serve as the mayor's deputy mayor for economic and housing development here in Newark, New Jersey. I do have the pleasure of being able to talk to you about the Lionsgate project. And as you heard, it is coming online soon, and I'll get through some of that. But I wanted to, for the planners and municipal administrators, to talk a little bit about, well, how did it all work? How did we find the site? What were the issues? What's the partnership? Because I think that is important because not only sharing information is good, but understanding the level of partnership you need to have to do something as exciting as bring Lionsgate to a city like Newark. Our mayor always talks about how we have to collaborate. He says that, we really can't do a task on our own, and any hard task, we need partnership and collaboration. And while I would say Lionsgate has not been the hardest, it is definitely one of them. And you'll hear all about that. So as I get started, I am going to start similarly to Desiree with a video that started when the groundbreaking, well, I don't know if it was a groundbreaking, but at least the announcement was made in Newark. So bear with me for 1 second.
Newark is getting a taste of Hollywood. A former public housing site will soon be the home of a $100 million film and TV production studio. NJPAC is collaborating with Lionsgate and the studio group to build a 15-acre facility with 6 sound stages. It's in the South Ward where the Seth Boyden Housing Project once stood. The property was abandoned in 2015 and demolished last February. Lionsgate will be the anchor tenant and hold the naming rights. It's the first purpose-built studio in New Jersey specifically made for TV and film production. Construction is slated to begin this summer. The studio is expected to create 600 jobs, with priority going to Newark residents.
Film in Newark have a relationship. So this is a full circle moment for us. We coming back to that moment here. And it's incredible that we come back to that moment at Seth Boyden, the oldest and first housing project built in the city of Newark. That we do that on this complex that has had so many, difficult days, particularly in its end.
So I hope everyone was able to hear it. I'm new to sharing videos on Zoom. So it's kind of funny because I can't hear anything. So glad I'm not in video or TV. Okay, so wanted to thanks for the chat comment. I appreciate it. So I was asked to talk a little bit about why did we pick the site, what type of partnership did we need to have, type of infrastructure needs that made this an ideal site, and also some of the community benefits that are going to happen in the neighborhood. So, okay, so as you heard in the clip, we chose a site in our South Ward, the Dayton community. And here, it was a former public housing site called Seth Boyden. It had been vacant for at least about 10 years, and there were no real plans for redevelopment. And so with the partnership of the Housing Authority, they were able to get approval from the federal government to change the use from public housing to be able to make way for community development, studios, and entertainment space. I will say we will also have some residential adjacent to the studios, but nonetheless, we were able to get that approval from HUD, which was a big accomplishment by our Housing Authority partners. So what was the other reason that we chose the site? Well, the other reason we chose is it was large enough. So it is 15 acres. So that allows us to have the 6 studios that want to come into Newark. And that isn't easy. We are landlocked, of course, as a city, and we do have a lot of development happening, but we do not have a lot of sites that are that large. And so that was also a big plus. The third part really is where it's located. Some of you may know it is about 10 minutes from the airport. It is less than 20 minutes from Newark Penn Station, and it's less than a half an hour from New York City. So when you're thinking about, well, how do people get into your community? How do people get into your city? Having some level of infrastructure, whether it's what trains, planes, and automobiles, you actually can figure that out by knowing where Lionsgate is going to be in our South Ward, and it's good access for people to be able to come in and out of the city. The second thing is okay, I talked about how any hard task you need a partnership. Well, in this case, a lot of people had to be pioneers because you had to have a vision. When you went to the site before, it was, vacant, abandoned public housing development, and you had to be able to take the risk to know that something fantastic like the Lionsgate could come. So whether it was the governor who was able to create the tax credits and get through legislation to do so, with the EDA now administering it, or the mayor who said, okay, public housing, no, we're actually going to now figure out how to do studios in Newark, or even the housing authority who had to really muscle their way through federal approvals. But the vision comes partly from New Jersey Performing Arts Center. So NJPAC is the key partner in all of this. And they were able to secure a partnership with Great Point Studios, Lionsgate, and their development partner, Matrix. And so you can see how all of these partners were necessary because there's funding involved, there's land involved, there's ability to build something is involved. But the takeaway, I think, for some of the administrators and planners is for the city of Newark, what we had to do is we had to do a redevelopment plan for the Seth Boyden neighborhood. So that, of course, had to be approved by our council twice and also our central planning board. And what that would do was then, second, allow us to designate the housing authority as the named redeveloper, which third allowed the housing authority to select a partner, and they were able to directly select NJPAC with the others that I've mentioned. So in our case, initially, our role was really about land use and planning and making sure we could comply with that. The second role we are playing is on the financing and helping when there's a gap, or if there's a need to support applications to the state or anyone else. And so that's some takeaways for the planners and municipal administrators. So, okay, so we know that we never want to negatively impact a community when we bring in new development. And, people were worried. So we held many community meetings with the Dayton Street community because we did not want to unintentionally negatively impact the community because there's homeowners there, there's businesses there. Now, albeit some businesses may be able to move along, but I will say that the ones that we want to keep, we want them to stay. And of course, we want our homeowners and our residents to stay in the neighborhood and benefit from this project. So what did that mean? Well, we required that the partners, NJPAC, the Housing Authority, and everyone else, that we would have a community benefits agreement. So it's not required. It's not like Aspire, for those that know about Aspire through the state and EDA. It's not a requirement, but it is a requirement for the city. And why do we say that? It's because we are concerned at times that even though we have laws that say that Newarkers are supposed to get opportunities to get into the workforce and have local contracting opportunities, it doesn't always happen the way we want to because our laws say best efforts. So in order for us to strengthen our relationship with our community and make sure they knew that this was also for them, we are executing a community benefits agreement that will not only require them to do local marketing with groups like Invest Newark, Desiree mentioned them earlier, or even Newark Alliance, that is corporate owners and community-based owners throughout the city. We are also asking them that they have to employ MBE and local contractors at a minimum of 25% of the jobs. They also have to do, for construction jobs, they have to do a minimum of 40%, have to be local and minority businesses. They also have to purchase goods and services at a rate of 25% of the total cost. And we want also women and business enterprises, women-owned business enterprises to be at least 7%. So what do all those numbers mean? It means that they are more strict than our regular Newark workforce development law. And we wanted to ensure that our residents knew that this project was not only for great movies that are going to come and great television that's going to come, but also for our local economy and for the people who live there. So, okay, so what's next? Because I know our time is short, is to say the funding was secured. NJPAC and the team have closed on the site with the Housing Authority. The bidding has started for subcontractors, and we're making sure that everyone knows about these bidding opportunities for contracting. And construction, as Desiree said, will start next year. So we're super excited. And it's going to take 14 months to construct, and it'll be open in 2027. So I don't know about you, but whenever I watch something on the streaming, it says something around I see Lionsgate and I'm like, oh, now I know what Lionsgate is. And then also when I see shows like The Equalizer, I always think of Desiree. So just know that Newark is an exciting place to be, and come do business with us if you want to, or call us and we'd be happy to share anything that we know. So thanks again for the opportunity. And I will say, yes, the CBA is binding. So thanks.
Thank you, Allison. That was very interesting details about Lionsgate that I actually didn't know about. So I thought that was really good. And Desiree, congrats on the grant. I think that's going to be really big in terms of workforce development for the film industry in the city. So lastly, we have Liz Laney, who's a principal at Phillips Price Graggle Laney Keller, and she's going to provide insight regarding the incoming Netflix studio at Fort Monmouth and the planning and regulatory intricacies that have been involved as the campus develops. So Liz.
All right. Yes, thank you, Steve. I'm just going to share my screen. Please confirm that you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so good afternoon. I'm Liz Laney. As Steve said, I'm a principal at Phillips Price. We're a planning and real estate consulting firm located in Hoboken, and we have been the planning consultants for the Fort Monmouth Economic Revitalization Authority, or FMERA, since 2011. And so I've been involved in planning for the fort's redevelopment since that time. And as was already discussed, Netflix is constructing a production studio on approximately 300 acres of the former fort in the boroughs of Eatontown and Oceanport. And so today I'm going to focus mostly on how we approached the land regulations involved in permitting the studio. This may be a little dry zoning talk, but I'm going to try to move quickly and hopefully make it a little bit interesting. So first, a little bit about the fort. Hold on a sec. Okay. It was, as the name suggests, a military base. It opened about 100 years ago. In 2005, the federal government recommended its closure as part of the federal government's Base Realignment and Closure Commission, and military operations ceased in September 2011. The former fort encompasses over 1,100 acres in Monmouth County. It has 3 host municipalities: Tinton Falls, Eatontown, and Oceanport. And the total acreage is not entirely contiguous. And there's about 637 acres to the east of Route 35 in Eatontown and Oceanport. And that is really where Netflix will be. So the Netflix site is referred to as the mega parcel. It's going to incorporate close to 300 acres, again, as I said, east of Route 35 in Eatontown and Oceanport. And I worked closely with FMERA to draft land use regulations that'll govern the studio's development. And I think what I'd like to really focus on is, how do you zone to permit the successful operation of a studio use, which has its own unique set of requirements and considerations, while at the same time affording protections to adjacent properties and neighbors who will have to live with the studio use. Honestly, I think this was a challenge for everyone, including people from Netflix. One of Netflix's other large studios in the US is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And as you can see in this slide, it's mostly surrounded by desert with few abutting neighbors. And you can, put up a high security wall, you could put up tall buildings, and you're not really abutting any neighbors, or the impacts will be quite limited. And, it goes without saying, New Jersey is not New Mexico. We're the #1 most densely populated state, and New Mexico, as I looked up, is 45th. So our site is essentially infill development. Yes, this was a closed off military base for many decades, but it also directly abuts long established neighborhoods and roadway networks, which required us to embrace flexibility and creativity so that the studio can be a success and hopefully a good neighbor at the same time. So the parcels that make up the mega parcel are not always contiguous to one another, which presented some practical difficulties when it came to writing land use regulations. And so we organized it by creating a variety of subzones called development zones, which operate similarly to a typical land use zone, and they each have their own regulation. The next step was to understand how a studio of this size functions. And it's a similar, essentially similar to a college campus or even a military base, in that there are a multitude of structures and each has an important function, but any one structure cannot fully function in isolation without the others. They're all part of a greater whole and essentially all under the same umbrella of use, whether it be a college campus, military base, or a film studio. So as a result, we created one principal permitted use that applied to all, approximately 300 acres. And that is motion picture, television, and broadcast studios. And then within each development zone, we permitted specific principal and accessory structures. The idea being that the structures are essentially all performing different or interrelated jobs under one overarching use. And it was important to not be too restrictive in any definition of use or building type, because as we know, media is constantly evolving, and a company like Netflix is constantly evolving, as was noted, I think, within the last few weeks in the news. They're getting into podcasting now and more live events. So we had to, write regulations that were flexible enough to permit these evolving productions of the studio. So a large part of understanding how the studio functions was understanding what types of buildings and structures make up the studio. What's required, what happens in these buildings, and how do they relate to one another. This involved learning a whole new lexicon of studio-related vocabulary and coming up with definitions. So some examples of sound stages, water tanks, mill buildings, backlots, base camps. And I think if you work in the film industry, these types of buildings are sort of common knowledge. But for me, there was a definite learning curve, and particularly regarding what happens in each of these buildings. So one small example, Netflix wanted bungalows to be permitted. And, a bungalow is obviously a house. And this was concerning because Famira really did not want any housing on the site. They wanted people working in the studio to either buy homes in adjacent communities or stay in hotels in adjacent communities. So, when they showed us plans that showed a bungalow, we said, no, you can't have that. You can't have any housing. And what we learned is that in LA, most of the historic studios have bungalows, which are literally houses, but they were probably originally, I think, used for on-site talent, for housing for on-site talent, but they're now used as production offices for directors, writers, and producers. This may be common knowledge to anyone who's spent time on a studio lot or is familiar with the historic studios of LA. but we didn't know what it was. And so to avoid anyone thinking people are actually going to live on the studio site, we came up with the term executive outpost. It's both a nod to the fort's military past, and it's a nod to who gets one, i.e. an executive. And the other thing that, what we came to understand is that most of the studio buildings, when it came, what do these look like? How much square footage? How tall are they? How many people are going to work in a building at a time? We found that generally the studio structures, or regarding the studio structures, form follows function. So the height, the massing, the style is mostly dictated by use. For example, a soundstage is primarily used for indoor filming, in a controlled environment. It has to be soundproof. Often there are no windows. They need height to accommodate mechanical equipment, for sound and lighting. And there has to be enough square footage to accommodate, a whole host of uses, including large sets. So you can't be very restrictive in bulk regulations, or the buildings are no longer going to function as they are intended. And this required us to be, again, flexible, while at the same time trying to put in protections that will minimize impacts on surrounding land uses. So, for example, height. When we were writing the land use rules, which is the zoning for the fort in 2012, we were told explicitly to not permit any building greater than 3 stories or 45 feet. That was, it was out of character with surrounding community, et cetera. This is an impossible height limit for a studio operation. Netflix requested the sound stages be up to 70 feet and the business and production offices to be up to 75 feet. And we allowed those heights, but we gave all the structures actually a maximum height based on the structure, but we also created height districts. So each height district had a sort of no build area around its perimeter, and that a gradual increase in height is permitted the further away from the lot lines it is located. And so the maximum permitted height of any structure is the lesser of the maximum structure height or the maximum height in the height district. So if a building is permitted to be 35 feet and it's in a height district of 50 feet, it still can only be 35 feet. And the converse is true. And we were also able to use the height limits to put uses with the potential for nuisance impacts. So for example, there's animal boarding for film production, which of course can involve any kind of animal, as it turns out, and they need to be boarded somewhere. And so we put those in the very highest height districts because they were the very furthest away from surrounding properties. So, flexibility and I think maybe open-mindedness was also critical, particularly regarding signage. Advertising for studio projects through signage is an important part of the studio's operations. And many of the buildings have quite large facades. And so Netflix requested, and we wound up permitting a number of signs and height and square footage of signs that was far in excess of anything I had ever encountered in any other of my work. We have signs that are up to 800 square feet. We have signs that can cover an entire building. And, they're huge in any other context, but they're not atypical for a film studio. Another planning related concern was, how do you regulate parking? A soundstage has a whole multitude of uses that can take place there. And so how do you create parking standards for a building like that? Because the number of people in the building at any one time could vary so greatly. I'd like to say that we came up with something ingenious, but mostly we actually relied on Netflix's experience. They knew what they found to be sufficient in their other facilities, and so we took their word for it. But another consideration was that large portions of the studio are going to be enclosed by a perimeter security wall, which makes sense. I mean, the fort itself had a wall around most of it. And initially, Netflix requested that the wall be up to 20 feet in height, which is high. and not necessarily a friendly face to the surrounding community. So we agreed, but required there be berming so that the height only appeared up to 10 feet to people on the exterior of the wall. And then, we were asked for landscaping, et cetera, to make the wall look nicer. And Netflix agreed, but they said, you can't have any landscaping that anyone can climb and get over the wall. So, we have design guidelines to break up the mass of the wall, to allow art on the wall, so that at least it provides some visual interest to those who are looking at it. And in the end, Netflix wall, what they've gotten approved for in site plan is about 10 feet in height. So anyway, but it was an interesting component from a land use perspective, because we found that any potential adverse impacts were going to be limited to, some of them were going to be limited to being internal to the site, and they wouldn't be able to be seen or heard from the, outside the fort. And we're not expected to have public access. And so in those places, we were very permissive in terms of, for example, number of signs, height of signs, et cetera. If they were internal to the fort and couldn't be seen from the outside, we were sort of extremely permissive and really didn't put any limitations on it. This also applied to studio trailers, which are used for, you certainly hear about actors, having their trailer and hair and makeup, wardrobe. But it's also, there's on-set medical staff. There are school teachers and tutors for child actors. There are the animal wranglers for the animal talent, craft services, et cetera. And they're important to how a studio operates. And we allow them to be located anywhere on a studio lot for any length of time, which of course is unusual because, if this was a residential neighborhood that people were going to be driving up and down, we would, of course, limit a trailer being parked outside for any length of time. But if it's internal to the site, we were very permissive. And as I said earlier, a large studio lot can become an insular city. People can enter for the day and have everything they need, so they never have to leave. And Famira was really adamant that not happen, and that local businesses boom rather than suffer from the existence of the studio. And so, for example, Netflix wanted to permit gyms. There already is a gym on another section of the fort, and not far from the studio, where the studio will be. And of course, there are gyms in the surrounding area. And Famira did not want the studio to cannibalize businesses or, business from these local merchants. And so the land use regulations limit the size of the studios. And also the size can only be 10,000 square feet, and you have to be an above the line talent. So if you work on the studio lot and you're not the star of the show, you're probably going to have to join a local gym. And the same thing was with retail. Retail was limited in size and location to encourage visits to the local business. And it was a very deliberate effort on the part of Famira to generate economic development from the studio to businesses outside the studio walls. So at this point, I think we have run out of time. So I'm going to pass it back to our moderator, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Liz. That was very interesting, and I appreciated all the intricacies that are involved in planning for this studio at Netflix. So I think, unfortunately, we're out of time. I put all of our email addresses in the chat. If you have questions, you feel free to reach out to each of us. So I want to thank each of our panelists for taking the time to speak today and providing valuable insight on how the state's film industry is growing and how local municipalities can embrace and prepare for film, whether it's a development of a new studio or production that's taken place, taking advantage of the various scenic backdrops of New Jersey. And thank you to NJEDA and the NJ Municipal Managers Association. So I appreciate everyone's time, and thank you for all attending today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.